Okay, all right. I'm just going to share my screen with the official welcome page. Oh, that's not the bit we want to see, is it? Back to the start. There we go. How are we going? I'll just wait a couple more minutes. Oh, technical difficulties. All right, I'm just going to wait a couple more minutes for my my noisy child to leave the house. For anyone else who is joining us. I'll just check what I can see from your end. Welcome, Paul. How are you? I think you can talk now. Good morning, Paul. No, okay, you're on mute still. Okay. Thanks, Agatha. Agatha says people might be a bit shy. I will ask a couple of questions as we go, just to for you to pop things in the chat box. So do feel free to pop things in the chat box. Any questions, it's useful to put them in the Q&A box, so we can just keep a track of, you know, if there's anything that we've not got to and stuff. Okay, all right, Agatha, it's 11 o'clock. I guess we'll make a start. I'll just share my screen. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so back to the front slide. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is a session on navigating uncertainty, a critical thinking approach to business strategy. So we'll get straight into it. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you're going to take lots and lots of value away from today. There we go. So first of all, it would be really useful for me to know as we go through what kind of business you have. So those that are watching live, if you can pop in the chat box what kind of business you have, and something put us in a good mood, because we always learn more when we're in a good mood and we're more projective. Think about something that makes you smile. So just, you know, maybe it's a happy dog or something in the last few hours perhaps. For me, what makes me smile is situations like this. I really love what I do. I'm a critical thinking specialist. I'm also a qualified teacher and lecturer. I've worked on the UWA diploma and at Curtin University, so lots of different places, but I love being face-to-face with people. So, you know, I'm still months into this webinars and Zoom situation, but getting used to it. But yeah, I love these kind of situations, sharing a joke, being with people and learning about people. So yeah, like it says there, I offer training to help people think clearly, decide confidently and act in line with their values. Now, if you saw the notes previous to the webinar, I did send you to a values quiz, which would be useful to just have at the back of your mind as we go through today, and as we go through the different reflections that we're doing. So why is a critical thinking specialist talking about business strategy? Sorry, the things that you're going to take away: the biases and fallacies. We're going to have reflection, research strategies at our fingertips, some tools to make quick decisions, and hopefully a bit of a personal action plan. While we are doing this, I would really like it if you can be present. So if you've got a mobile phone next to you, pop it to one side, put it on silent. I would encourage you to make lots of notes. I'm a big fan of handwriting notes because you process it a bit differently from typing, but it's very much up to you, your personal preference. Do feel free to ask questions and you know, pop them in the Q&A, like I said. And there's probably quite a few things that you'll take away that you might need a bit more time to go and implement. So it's not that you'll come out at the end and have everything crystal clear. It's something that you might percolate on for a few days, but you know, it's really up to you and how you use the different sections. So what is critical thinking? The question I get asked the most. It's about analysis of facts to form a judgment. So, you know, it's about knowledge, some things I'm going to cover today. There's some skills in there, and there's certain attitudes which are useful for us to all bear in mind while we're, you know, trying to think critically. And it helps us think clearly, solve problems, and make better decisions. What I was going to say earlier is how that fits with strategy. A business strategy is basically a combination of all those decisions and taking actions, performing as a business to accomplish the business goals and secure a competitive position in the market. You know, that's what we want to do at the end of the day, is to be successful in our field. It's the backbone of the business, the roadmap which leads us to those desired goals. And clearly over the last few months, things have been well, all the regular rules have been thrown out the window. The things that we were certain of have suddenly become very uncertain. And obviously, depending what line of work you're in, things have been either like affected severely, or for some people, there's been very little impact, but everyone's had some kind of effect on their business due to coronavirus, the lockdown, and then the follow on, the second order outcomes of those things. You know, even something as simple right now as the fact that due to what we call a normalcy bias, a lot of people I speak to are like, well, I've kind of got used to staying in. And so they're just not going out as much. They're not going shopping as much, even though here in Western Australia, things are essentially back to normal, or whatever normal looks like now. So I want to acknowledge that, first of all. You know, we've all been through the ringer in the last few months. And so taking a moment to do this first step I'm going to do with you, that reflection, is going to be really, really important. So I've got this structure that I'm going to be going through with you today. It's a critical thinking compass, because, you know, life is a journey. We're all trying to find our direction and navigate through. So this is something that I've created based on all the skills that we do, and it's kind of a step-by-step compass. So the first thing we do is a reflection, considering our current habits of mind, any barriers to what we want to achieve, and how we're going to implement changes. And then reframing, exploring alternative approaches and interpretations. Then we're going to get onto research, which is so important to our business and often forgotten. We're going to evaluate the information that we get. I'll show you some tools around that. Interpret some of the things around biases that might be happening. Some tools then to make decisions, how we communicate those, and then of course right at the top there, taking action. Critical thinking is something that comes from philosophy, and philosophy, you know, people imagine someone sitting around in a chair thinking and just pondering, navel gazing, whatever you do. But what is really important to me when you do your critical thinking is that you actually do something as a consequence of it. And I'm acknowledging there, you know, be brave, act imperfectly, and test the idea in the real world. Because, you know, if we don't do that, then we're not going to get anywhere. We have to act in order to move forward. Now, it's useful to acknowledge, like, normally when you're starting out in business, something like this might look familiar, a business model canvas. Now, I'm assuming that anyone watching is already in business, maybe fairly well established, and will have an idea of this. But if you haven't done this previously, this is a useful activity. I'm not going to go through it in detail today because it's, you know, it's not related to critical thinking, but there are some useful prompts in there about, you know, what do you do? Who do you do it for? How do you do it? What do you need in order to do that? How do you reach them? So all of these questions are useful to bear in mind, and something that you might want to come back to. But as I said, I'm going to be going through this compass because I can see how what I've got from a critical thinking perspective marries up very well with this. And you'll see that as we go through. I'm just going to nip out and check my chat because management consultancy for external stakeholders. Oh, sorry. Excellent. Donald Trump tweets. I shouldn't laugh. Thank you very much, Daniel, for sharing that. I think everyone's feeling a bit shy otherwise, but Daniel, I appreciate your input on that. That's good to know. So from a management consultancy perspective, I think you'll get a lot of value from today. All right, I'll just hop back to my screen share. Sorry, I can't see that while I'm speaking with you. Okay, back in here. So our reflection. Now, we often forget how important reflection is, and these days with all of my clients, I hear the same story, is that busy, 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 so much coming at us all the time. Sometimes we forget to reflect. So on your notebook or whatever you're writing on, have a think, when and where do you do your best thinking? So I've got an image here of a lady in a bathing suit on a rock in some beautiful outdoor area. This is what we think about when we say reflection. Like, we think of some gorgeous place that we would much prefer to be. But the reality is, you know, we need to fit reflection into our day. And I had to choose an image to illustrate this, but the best I could get was this little man here without going too rude. But often, you know, from my own experience and the people that I've worked with, the toilet is a good place for reflection. The shower also, so that would have been an even more risque picture to put in there. Toilet, the shower, driving, washing dishes, walking the dog, all of these places are things that come up as good places for reflection. Swimming is another good one. And what they often have in common is that we don't have access to our phones. We're often alone in these places, or we're not able to talk to other people. And we are often doing something physical. So consider that when you're thinking about what is the best place for reflection for me. Everyone's different. And if it is going for a walk, but your habit is to always have a podcast in when you're going for a walk, perhaps plan a day when you're not going to have your podcast in and ruminate on the challenges that you've got. And that's not to say that you go, oh, right, I need to solve this problem. I need to solve this problem. Our brains are very clever in how they ruminate on something. Often we just need to plant a seed, and then the things seem to come to us when it's something that is constantly in the back of our minds. Like, we love solving problems and the brain loves to find solutions to things, but we need to give it that chance to do it. So consider, can you plan your day to create more of that time? You know, it's useful to actually have that space to think on a regular basis. And also, what's important here is, what is your most productive, focused kind of time of day? So for me personally, it's the morning. I'm definitely a morning person. So occasionally it means getting up before my children and maybe doing some journaling, or just taking a moment to think about stuff, or reading something and then writing something in response to what I've read. And what I would really encourage you to plan some time for or consider is the purpose, the vision, and the values of the business, because these are absolutely foundational to the direction that you want to go in. What I would like you to also be aware of and have the confidence in is that you are the expert on your business, your life, and what you want. So, you know, myself or anyone from Business Station or from any walk of life can come in and say, oh, I think you should do this, X, Y, and Z. But they don't know the ins and outs of your life, your ambitions, the balance that you need to achieve. And no one cares as much about your business as you do. No one knows your customers as well as you do. So, you know, be brave and be confident when you're reflecting and thinking, okay, well, other people are saying I should do this, but if it doesn't feel right for you, then listen to your gut. And this is a good opportunity to try and tap into that. Something that you might want to consider down the bottom here is how we can make reflection something obvious for us to do, satisfying, accessible, easy, and attractive. So these are all foundations for good habits. If you've read Atomic Habits by James Clear, those terms might seem useful to you or something that you've seen before. But in order for us to do something regularly, we need to tick those boxes. So think about, you know, is there some kind of little window in the day, and it doesn't need to take a long time. I'm not advocating for you to do this for 2 hours a day. It's not practical. We've all got lives to lead. But, you know, if there's maybe a short drive that you do and you think, all right, I'm going to not have the radio on and I'm just going to deliberately try and think about my business or my strategy or my vision for what I would like. Sometimes it just takes a few minutes to reach an epiphany and have some way to write it down. My favorite, personally, the shower. And what I often do is get a whiteboard marker and write on the mirror after I've come out of the shower. So a lot of the things that you see today are actually thoughts from the shower. So write down for yourself, what is the best place for you to think? And how can you make that a regular habit? Reframing. So this is part 2 of the compass. Ask yourself, why several times. So you'll have some ideas or you'll have some assumptions about what you think you should do or what you would like to do next. So try and get to the root cause. Why do you want to do that? So as a management consultant, Daniel, you mentioned, if you are trying to get people down to first principles, okay, why are you in business? Why do you want to do this? Why do you enjoy the interactions with customers? Or why do you really value I don't know, time putting together new strategies? Whatever it is that you do on a regular basis, thinking about why, back to first principles. Accurate description. So we will have our own very blinkered view of our businesses, and it's easy to get caught up in that and just be focused forward. And sometimes that is very valuable, to just have that, you know, absolute dead set goal. And once you've made a plan, it's really useful. But if you're at a point where you need to rethink your strategy, try and take those blinkers off. What does it look like to other stakeholders? And we'll talk about that more in research. Influence. What can you control at this time? It's been very easy to sit back in the last few weeks and months and say, I can't do anything. This is out of my hands, or government rules say that I can't operate as I normally do. But there's always something which is within your control. And even if that one thing is just your mindset, then that is very, very powerful, how you approach things. Because if you've been feeling really negative and down on things, that's going to color everything about what is happening and what you will do. Whereas if you try and find the positives, I think I've said further down, new opportunities, if there's silver linings lurking in this cloud. Because some people I know in business who have been incredibly positive throughout this time, saying, well, coronavirus and COVID-19 and the lockdown, it's changed the market, but it's also sped up some things around digitization. And for some people, it's brought along these whole new opportunities that they never even considered before. So like I said at the top, you know, I'm very much someone who likes face-to-face education, but you know, you have to get good at Zoom very quickly. And suddenly, you know, a podcast invite to the other side of the world is actually quite useful. And you say, oh, well, maybe this is something that I can work with and broaden and, you know, reach different markets. So we'll have all these assumptions that have been challenged in the last few weeks. So that's a useful one to think, right, what can I control? And list all of those things. What does success really look like to me? So for some of you, it will absolutely be about the bottom line, but this comes back to the values piece as well. So it might be that success looks like work-life balance. Perhaps success looks like being able to serve as many people as possible and finding an avenue to do that. So asking that question, what does success really look like to me? Just yesterday, I was speaking to a friend about people with very successful companies, successful in that context, meaning very high turnover, but in reality, they may not feel successful in other parts of their life. You know, we sacrifice a lot if we are working all the time. So thinking about that, what would success really, really look like? And for some people, you know, local restaurant owners here, the lockdown was an opportunity to reflect and say, actually, running a restaurant 7 days a week and the hours that requires wasn't for them. And they decided to close, but they took the control back rather than being a victim of circumstance. They said, actually, this is a good time for us to change. So, you know, that's a tough decision to make, but they explained it very clearly to their customers. And as people with good business acumen, I'm sure they'll find some other options which better suit them. Another useful reframe, what would one of my leadership, moral, or ideal heroes do as an approach to the problem or the situation that I'm in? So perhaps there's someone that you follow on LinkedIn and you think, yes, that's the kind of person I want to be, or a business down the road and you admire how they would go about it. If possible, you could even ask them. We often are afraid to ask. But this comes back to the research bit that's coming next as well. Context. So in 10 years' time, what might you wish you'd chosen at this point? What do you think future you would appreciate that the person here right now has chosen at this point in terms of strategy? What are my values? What solutions fit best with them? And also education. I like the phrase, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, all right? So what have I learned and what can I continue to learn from this situation? And how can I apply that learning moving forward? There's no point going through a difficult time and suffering because of it and then not taking those lessons forward and implementing them in our lives. And often the most difficult things that happen to us teach us the most, and they push us out of our comfort zone. So that's a useful one to consider as well. All right, so the research. There's me with a good friend of mine trying to pretend we're doing research, just laughing. What evidence do I need to support my ideas and beliefs? So when you know, teaching critical thinking, a lot of it comes down to evidence, but in this case, it's about asking stakeholders. So that might be your customers, your clients, your staff. Your staff are such a untapped potential source. If you do have staff working for you, they may have some great ideas, and it's useful to talk to them and say, what do you think we should do? What's a good idea? Perhaps your peers in business, if you know other people in a similar line of work or a complementary line of work, some kind of aligned business. And it's useful here to offer an incentive, particularly for customers and clients. So for myself, just yesterday, I put some surveys out through my Instagram, and you know, even just having a conversation with one person led to a new opportunity for a sale and a speaking opportunity. And I was like, oh, I should do this more often, because it's so important that we engage with them and, you know, be honest and say, hey, I'm just interested in your feedback. And the incentive was bubbles, whether that was going to be champagne, beer, kombucha, whatever bubbles they wanted. I wanted to make sure it was an inclusive offer. So some kind of incentive that might be aligned with your business is a good one. And researching what others are doing. So for example, here I was speaking to someone who does photo booth, wedding photography stuff. So going around different weddings doing this. So obviously weddings have been massively impacted by what's going on. But my cousin in the UK actually has a very similar business. And I'd seen that she'd been very clever collaborating with all sorts of wedding providers to create this amazing pack of you know, everything that you would need for an amazing wedding in her local area. And the prize was specifically for someone from the National Health Service. And so, you know, this was a beautiful thing to do from a generosity point of view. And obviously in the UK, things are quite different from here right now. So National Health Service heroes is a huge thing. So it reflects well on them, but also puts her in a very powerful position. So when all the weddings that have been put off do come in, and when they can book things, they will be seen as the premier person in their field. And that's what we want to try and do, is position yourself as the best in your field. Nobody really wants to go to the second best person. You want to be seen as the go-to person for your product or for your business. So seeking out any win-win collaborations with like-minded people or people with values that align with yours. Talking to your customers, you know, it might be useful to talk about pricing and packaging. So looking at what you currently do. Obviously, there's still financial impacts rolling on from coronavirus and the lockdown, but it doesn't mean people don't have money. And there's a lot of people that have not been affected. So, you know, although we might have this idea that, oh, I need to drop my prices or I need to do things differently, is there some way that you could package up your offering to bring more value to your customers, but also make a greater sale? So if somebody really likes your business and they're buying A from you, perhaps you could partner with someone else, or you could package up something else that you offer and create some kind of added value benefit, which, you know, may cost a little bit more to. You know your products, you know your business, you know your clients, you know what they need best. But that research and thinking about alternatives is really, really useful. And if you've thought about your purpose, going back to that first piece, then researching, you know, what will move you towards your purpose. Perhaps right now you go, this is the time I'm going to write my book. Maybe you want to position yourself as an expert in your field and write your book. So researching that would be another thing that could come under this section. So what do you need to do? How do you go about it? What kind of things can move you towards that goal? Yeah, if your purpose is to be the #1 person in your field. So lots of questions for you there, and I hope you're making notes as we go through. And don't forget, you can add some questions in too. All right, this one looks a lot. Before I put the page up, logical fallacies, right? So when we evaluate, logical fallacies. They're errors in reasoning that renders an argument invalid. So a bad reason to believe or do something. That's what's hiding behind my little window there. Now, I've just put a few popular ones here. I know there's a lot of text here, but I wanted to be there for you to reference back to. But ad populum, first one, appeal to popularity. Just because it's something that's popular, it doesn't mean it's correct. So if you are seeing all the businesses around you doing, I don't know, this particular offer or dropping their prices or whatever it may be, it doesn't mean it's the right thing, and it doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. So try not to get caught up in that. My example here says, Cosmo said 90% of women love women with beards, therefore you should grow a beard. It doesn't fit right, does it? So just because someone says it is, and again, this comes back to you are the expert on your business, so have the confidence in that. The ad hominem, the personal attack, using character flaws, morals, reputation to not believe someone. So perhaps a client comes to you that you don't particularly like, but maybe they have a genius idea. So just because you don't like that customer or you don't like where the ideas come from, it doesn't mean it's not a good idea. So my example here, Pete likes to hang out at Swanbourne Nudist Beach, so we can't trust his economic predictions. It's like, well, really, that doesn't impact on him. But also the flip side of this is appeal to authority. So using a reputation or a title of a person as a reason to believe their true merit of the claim. So, for example, David Attenborough wears pants from Marks and Spencer's. They must be good because he's an expert. But I'm sure many of you would know, David Attenborough is not an expert on pants or textiles or anything to that effect. He's an expert on animals. So just because someone is an expert, like you may even on Business Station say, just because someone's an expert on, I don't know, using Canva, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are, I don't know, great at marketing or finance or whatever. False dichotomy. This is about being stuck between A and B. So black and white fallacy is another name for it. And often, again, when we're blinkered, we kind of think, oh, my option is to, I don't know, carry on making not as much money or close. And think, actually, what else can I do here? There are always other options. And if you've been feeling very stuck in whatever situation you're in over the past few months, there are always other options. I've seen people jump from one type of business, for example, Airbnbs and gîtes in the south of France, to becoming an Instagram coach within a week. She just happened to have those skills and she thought, what else can I do? So sometimes if there's not the market and the opportunity for what we were doing, there are other things that we can do. We're all multifaceted beings. Everyone has completely different experience and skills. So think about, what are the alternatives? What are my other options here? So yeah, the example here, your options are to eat yesterday's lunch in the fridge or to get lunch out with me and spend $25. You say, actually, I could just go and get a pack of sushi for 10. Thanks very much. But I eat by myself. Slippery slope. So again, this may have been something that a lot of us have been theorizing. This is domino theory. If A happens, then B happens. A is usually reasonable and B is often extreme outcome. So if there is a second wave of lockdowns, then everything will go back exactly as it was. And you say, well, actually, maybe it won't. Maybe it will just be something more gentle. Perhaps we'll just not have those big events for a while, whatever it may be. Yeah. So if I take this tablet to help me sleep, I'll be doing cocaine by next week. As we all know is not true. And then a hasty generalization, using a sample size to represent the whole population. So particularly if you're interviewing customers and you've maybe had 3 customers say something similar, obviously you want to honor that information. If they're people that have been loyal to your business, you kind of want to make sure that you are giving them what they want, but also be aware that 3 people is not, it's not indicative of what everyone is saying. The example on here, I've got 2 colleagues from Rockhampton and they're amazing, therefore all people from Rockhampton are amazing. We know that that's, there are probably some not so amazing people from Rockhampton, but there's probably lots of amazing people too. But if we have a small sample size, then we don't want to pretend that that represents everyone. Okay, another busy slide, I'm afraid, but this one is about cognitive biases. So you may have heard of confirmation bias. That's the most sort of common and popular one. But there are lots and lots of biases which are errors in our thinking. And this is not your fault, my fault, anyone's fault. This is human nature, and it's true for everyone. So this is kind of a useful, universal way to connect with people. You say, you know how you do that thing? Everybody does that thing. So first one, anchoring bias, giving more weight than due to the first information we receive. So these are examples about underpants, just to keep it memorable for you. So this is Fred and his magic red and blue underpants. I'm wearing my red underpants in that self-portrait by my bed I saw when I woke up. So that was the first thing he saw, and he thought, right, that's the first idea in my head, that's what I'm going to go with. Likewise, when you're doing your customer surveys and research, it might be that the first person you speak to gives you an idea and you go, oh, I should go with that. That's a great idea. But then you'll have lots of other ideas, and we tend to weigh up all the alternative subsequent options against that first measure. So, so do consider that when you're making a decision about what to do next. Take some time to reflect and really try and think, right, what was the first thing? Am I letting that persuade me too much towards the others? Second one, confirmation bias. So seeking information to support our existing beliefs and discounting evidence against it. The example here, I'm sure my blue underpants feel softer. They are more comfortable. So Fred's got it in his head that this is the best thing. This is, you know, the nicest option and the most comfortable. So he's going to look for those, you know, comfortable feelings. So when it's you and your business, and perhaps you've got a belief about, I don't know, what the market is looking for from now on, try and question that. It's very difficult to take a step back from the biases that we hold, because it means, you know, when we go research, we will maybe frame survey questions in order to look for that response. There's lots of different ways that it will influence what we see, because, you know, they say, don't believe everything you think. Just because you think something is the case, like people don't want to buy this product anymore, or there's no future in, I don't know, hairdressing. No, there's always a future in hairdressing. But yeah, you know, just be aware of what your existing beliefs are. Overconfidence bias, so overestimating our abilities, accuracy, and predictions on how unbiased we are. And this is a tricky one, particularly if you're going to go into something a little bit different. There's the Dunning-Kruger effect. When we first have an area that we're trying to work on, we are up here, we are so confident, and it's only as you learn more about a topic and you realize, oh wow, I don't know anything, and I've got a long way to go to increase my learning. So think about, I don't know, a job around the house, and you say, oh yeah, I can do a skirting board. You go, great, I'm going to be fabulous, I'm going to do a skirting board. And then you do it and you go, oh wow, no, this is a lot harder than I thought it was. And then slowly you get back up to your, you know, actual knowledge and skill. So that overconfidence bias happens to everyone. Status quo bias. So this is similar to the normalcy, keeping things the same rather than taking action and facing the consequences. This is classic, particularly in big organizations and big companies. Nobody wants to make the decision. So in your case, perhaps it's more of a normalcy bias. You know, if you're like, this is the way that I've always done it, this is what I'm comfortable with, this is what I'm good at, I'm going to stick with that. But if, you know, due to lockdown, things are uncertain, you've got to do something different, we need to step away from that a little bit. And that's where the reflection and really checking in with your values and your purpose, as we said at the start, would be useful. Is there other ways that you can achieve your purpose and use your skills? Oh yeah, sorry. So I wore my blue underpants to bed. I can't be bothered changing. Sunk cost bias, and this is another very tricky one in business. If you have put money, time, and effort into something already, we're more likely to continue with that project than change to a better one. The thing here, my red silk rhinestone underpants were so expensive, I should wear them. But, you know, if you've just, I don't know, fitted out shop or got some new design work done or whatever it may be, and you've spent some money on that, we are so conditioned to say, I should stick with that option. Whereas if that option is not a good one, and you know in your gut that it's not a good one, as you're moving forward, you're going to waste more time, more money, more effort on that choice, rather than owning that and say, actually, I think that was a mistake. draw a line under it and moving on. And then finally, survivorship bias. So paying too much attention to successes while glossing over failures. So I had a great day when I wore my blue underpants last week. But in this case, it might be, you know, you're maybe if you're stuck in that status quo, you say, I've put some money into this, and you're looking around, you're saying, oh, this business that's similar to mine is doing the same thing and they're doing great. But perhaps there's 6 other businesses that are also trying to do the same thing and they're not doing great. But we will pay more attention to the one that is doing, you know, that seems to be doing well. So be aware of that when you're looking around at other businesses, seeing what other people are doing, that we're not, you know, spotlighting the one success story and not being aware of, you know, and it's hard sometimes to be aware of what businesses aren't doing so well, because, you know, the reason they're not doing so well is because they're not out there. But we are all very prone to doing that and thinking, oh, they're doing well, so if I do what they do, I'll be all right. But we never know. All right, so sorry, this is a very text heavy slide as well, but just decide, okay, really practical tools. If you're making notes, write some of this down. You might want to draw on your page a little axis like this, straight line up vertical and a horizontal line. This is a matrix of how reversible is a decision and how consequential is a decision. So it's, you know, we get really hung up on, if I make this decision, it's got massive consequences and I'm stuck with it forever. The reality is, you know, life is an experiment. Pretty much anything bar death and babies is reversible. Not necessarily with no consequence, but we've always learned something by going through the process. So, you know, if it's a decision that, you know, Jeff Bezos describes it as one that you can walk back out of the door. So we can go in and try something, and then if we can just walk back as easily, then great. Sometimes, you know, it might be the consequences are that we've spent a bit of money or tried something out, but also we forget that when we do that, we learn an awful lot as well. So there'll be other benefits rather than just, you know, oh, I lost money or it's a negative consequence. So think about, you know, how reversible, how consequential it is. So for example, my husband had a year off to try and start a business. In terms of the business, it wasn't a success. However, he learned an awful lot along the way, and he did some study during that time, which led him to the role he's in now, which he loves. So, you know, we never quite know, you know, we never know what the end of the story is, as they say. And as I think it's a Hamlet quote, nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So the way that you frame it to yourself makes a huge difference to, you know, how you think about the situation. So think about your decision. How consequential is it, and how reversible is it? And if it's something that is fairly inconsequential and irreversible, give it a try. If all you've got to lose is, you know, an experiment, a bit of time, then, you know, go for it. Whether that's giving someone a new role, a new responsibility, frame it to them as that. Say, hey, this is just temporary. Or, you know, maybe a special offer, and you say to your clients, this is just temporary. This is just something I'm trying out. And then no one's disappointed if you reel it back. But you'll always learn something by trying. Another useful matrix is how much effort does it require and what's the potential reward. So for myself, you know, if I'm putting on a new training course, then the effort required, there's a bit of initial effort and time and outlay, maybe making some videos, but then the reward, depending on who I'm pitching it to, it could be, you know, potentially a big income earner, but it, you know, it might just be something that I want to sell or even give as a freebie. But if it's something that I'm spending hours and hours doing, I'm not going to want to do it as a freebie. So considering that, you know, what do I need to put in and what am I going to get back out of this? Particularly if there's any collaborations or win-win situations with other businesses, making sure that there's balance there. I'm sure we've all done things where we feel like we've been cheated to some extent. So making sure people are very honest about that is really good as well. Now, the decision dice. This is something that I can send to you as a follow-up if you're interested in having your own. It's something I'm looking into getting made, but this is something to help with framing decisions. So by going through all this process, this research, things that you think you might want to do, you now do need to make a decision, but it's useful to reflect on more than just the pros and cons. So I have this dice, you throw it around. We do it spontaneously in order to access that quick response that you might come up with. So the black one is pessimistic and cautious. If you get that one, you ask yourself, what is the worst possible outcome of this decision? What's the worst thing that could happen? And sometimes it's just that we might feel a bit embarrassed, or we may have lost, I don't know, a little bit of money. But the best possible outcome might be that we make an awful lot of money, or we learn something amazing from it, or we might have new business relationships and friendships, or you never know, right? So think about what is the best possible outcome. And this one as well, being brave. What would you do if you weren't afraid? So a real optimistic approach to the situation. And if you're choosing between an A and a B, then think about that for both. Rational and neutral. What's the most likely outcome based on what you know at the moment? And always be kind to yourself. We make decisions based on what we know in that moment. And it's only with hindsight that we say, shouldn't have done that. But we never know what's coming up. And the topic was navigating uncertainty. But the truth is we never know what's going to happen. We might get hit by an asteroid tomorrow, or hit by a bus. That's probably more likely. But rational and neutral, what's the most likely outcome? If we were to divorce emotion from the situation, what's kind of a sensible approach to it? And then we have, what's your gut feeling on the decision? Emotions and gut feelings. So how do you feel about the different options? And what does your gut say? And if you're having trouble accessing your gut feel, my favorite, very high-tech solution is one of these. 50-cent piece is more satisfying than the others, but any coin will do now that cash is pretty much useless at the moment with all the card payments. But allocate yourself heads and tails, flip the coin, and if it says, right, tails, this is your outcome, you will, hopefully most people get an immediate kind of either like a relief, like, that's what I wanted, or that little feeling in the pit of your stomach where you say, no, I don't like that option. And that tells you straight away whether it's truly what your gut wants or whether it's something that doesn't sit well with you. So think about that. Think about that one. And get a coin out, try it out. Creativity and alternatives. So what are the alternatives? If you've got between A and B, what other way is there to approach it? And sometimes the most outlandish ideas initially seem insane or silly or impossible, and then it's useful to then go, right, what are the actual barriers to this? So if it's that you want to, your strategy is to suddenly have like a chain of 6 businesses all over Perth, you currently have 2 or something, and then you're like, right, what is there other ways you can do it? Perhaps like pop-up versions of your business, or mobile versions of your business, or whatever it may be. So there's always different ways around a situation. What would you do if you weren't afraid? So that was the going back to the dice, that is the which one, optimistic and brave. A favorite of mine, in 10 years time, how will you feel about it? So that's this blue side, down the track, and values. So in 10 years time, how will you feel about this decision? What would you wish you would have made? What do you wish you would have planned to do? What do you think in 10 years time, you, the expert on your life, your business, will be happy that you chose looking back? So see if you can get into that frame of mind. And then in terms of, deciding what to do in terms of your strategy, what decisions fit best with your values? So there's certain things that, they might seem like a good idea and a business advisor or coach might tell you to do, but what really sits well with your values? Okay, I'm aware of time. I'm going to rush through. Once you've decided, you obviously need to communicate what you're going to do. So who do you need to communicate the plan to? And that will be very specific to your business. So you probably need to communicate it to the people in the business, maybe a business partner or staff, whatever it is, but also communicating with the other stakeholders in your life. So perhaps your partner, your parents, if they're around a lot, your children, maybe friends and colleagues. If your plan is to really knuckle down and have some amazing project over the next month, then it's useful to just let the people who are important to you know that is your focus. What's the best medium to communicate the message? You know, if it's with your staff, you probably need to sit down face to face and have conversations with them, either one-to-one or as a group. The best medium to communicate with, well, to be honest, face-to-face is ideal, but depending where you are, what the current situation is, it might not be an option. But, you know, honoring them and showing that you care and that you want to give them some time in order to move forward in the most positive way. What language will ensure my message is delivered? So this potentially is more for communicating with your customers. So the medium might be, you know, via an Instagram private message to the most important customers, and the kind of language you might use, you want to try and, you know, frame it, whatever it is, in a positive way. People are always interested in what's in it for me, what are the outcomes for me, because, you know, at the end of the day, we're all, no matter how generous we might seem, we are all focused on ourselves and what we can gain from a situation, even if it's a reciprocal agreement or whatever. So what's the best way to ensure the target audience's attention? Because, you know, I'm sure you will have experienced over the last few weeks, lots and lots of emails from lots and lots of businesses communicating what they've been doing, how they've been maintaining hygiene, that they're closed, that they're open. But a lot of that, for me personally, as a customer to many businesses, that was getting lost in the noise. So if it was a business that I was, you know, really invested in and wanted to really, really know what they're up to, I would have appreciated maybe a personalized email or a text message or something else, because, you know, our inboxes get flooded with stuff all the time. So think about that. The best way that you ensure your target audience's attention, the fact that you put an Instagram post about whatever it is your business is doing, doesn't necessarily mean that that person has seen that piece of information. So we need to ensure there's no noise interfering with the message delivery. Okay, and that noise can be literally, like, you know, they can't hear you, but also noise in terms of other things grabbing their attention, or you know, maybe you're communicating via Facebook, but the noise is that, like, you know, perhaps people are not on Facebook, they've chosen not to be on there very much at the moment. So thinking about that, how can you cut through other stuff to make sure that your clients or customers know that you value them, that you want to maintain that relationship, and that you want to offer them exactly what they need and want. Okay, and then finally, take action. The scariest part, and on the compass you'll see this is about being brave and acting imperfectly. Analysis paralysis is the worst thing, and it's not going to get you anywhere. So if you're struggling to actually implement the decision and the plans that you've made, what's stopping you take action? What are your barriers? Really consider it. Are you afraid of something? What can you do to remove the barriers? In some cases, it's something as simple as needing to learn some new technology, or perhaps just needing a pep talk from someone to G you up. Just yesterday, I was looking at something about 20 seconds of insane courage to go ahead and actually do something. That's often all it takes, and we can procrastinate endlessly on not doing it. So yeah, think about what can you do to remove any barriers. Think, right, if this is the action I take, what options will no longer be open to me? So when the word decide, that side part is the same root as homicide, genocide, suicide, just to kill off. It literally means to kill off other options. So perhaps that's something that's holding you back. Are you closing some doors by choosing a particular avenue? How can I reflect and evaluate on the action? So before you go ahead, it might be useful to just think, right, am I going to capture the feedback on this? Is there some way that I want to maybe do a survey at the end, or get information from people in order to, you know, come back to it at a certain point and see what I've learned from taking this action? Like I was saying at the top about habits, if I want it to be repeatable, habitual, how can I make it attractive, easy, visible, and satisfying so it becomes a habit? And that might be that you need to make it attractive, easy, visible, and satisfying to yourself in order to continue doing it. But also think about that from your customer's perspective. How can you make something attractive, easy, visible, and satisfying for them? So in terms of customer experience, you know, how can you make it something amazing. I think Mecca Cosmetics is very good at this. You know, you get a parcel from Mecca, it's beautifully wrapped, there's a freebie, there's a cute message, and a lot of people are handwriting messages in parcels and things. Etsy, a lot of small businesses on there are amazing at, you know, you get a parcel and it's like receiving a gift. It's so beautifully done. So think about that. How can you, you know, get your customers feeling like that? How can I encourage others to take action if that's the intent? So if you are taking this action, what do you want other people to do? How can you encourage them to do that? And those things to bear in mind might be useful in that context. And also, scaffolding is a term used a lot in educational circles, but I don't see it so much elsewhere. But this idea of, you know, you want to make it easy, an easy job for yourself, so easy wins. So perhaps if you say, right, I need to reach 10 new clients in, or I want to make 10 sales in a particular field. In order to do that, you probably need to reach out to 50 to 100 people in that area and maybe build that relationship, or at least make contacts. And then you go, right, how do I do that? Well, maybe you know, send messages on LinkedIn, maybe you follow people on Instagram, or you ask friends. So give yourself little wins, little steps in order to keep yourself feeling good and keep going. Because we all know that those knockbacks and failures or things where it didn't quite go to plan, they can be very discouraging. So think about, right, how can I you know, make it easy on myself, maybe build in some rewards for each step, like just little personal rewards for yourself, so you can create those easy wins. And again, with anything, having some kind of accountability is always useful. So this is where having a coach or a mentor or some kind of accountability buddy in business or other parts of your life is really, really useful to have someone to have to go, this is what I've done. So if the procrastination is strong, thinking about that, how can you build that into what you're doing? Then when we've taken action, as we said just previously, reflecting on that action and thinking, right, what have I learned from this? How can I use this? Am I going to continue with this action, or is it something reversible that I want to, you know, undo and try something different and go with option B, C, D, whatever it may be? Okay, so in terms of strategy, this is not about spending hours and hours and days writing a very detailed business plan. You need to be agile when facing uncertainty. You need to be open to change. You need to be curious about trying new things. And hopefully that's where the critical thinking compass is useful to you. Just, you know, have a rough plan, something you're going to try, give it your all for however long you say you're going to do it, and then evaluate and go through the process again. Okay, so this is me here, Beth Ann Wynne. So I'm on a mission to help as many people as possible think critically, decide confidently, and live aligned with their values. I work with businesses of all sizes, schools, universities, not-for-profits, government agencies. As I mentioned, I love doing face-to-face, but I also do webinars and have online courses and things. I really value learning, fun, sustainability, community, and equality. So if your values align with that, I'd love to hear from you. And then lots of different ways you can contact me on there. So feel free to drop me a message or follow on LinkedIn or on Instagram. I share lots of little tips, tricks, and hacks that hopefully would add value to you. And are there any questions? We're just on time. I'm just gonna exit out of here, stop my screen share. We have lots of participants. Hello, sorry, and some of you snuck in. I couldn't see with the screen share on. Was there any questions? No? Would anyone like to ask one while I'm here? Or want to share anything that they're gonna, how about we say, if there was something that has stuck with you that you would like to take away from today, that would be wonderful to, you know, survey my customers and say, what's been the most valuable thing to you today? You can pop that in the chat box. Don't be shy. chat box gone? There we go. Reframing, thinking about things under my control. Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate that feedback. Yes, I think we can get very stuck in particular mindsets, and so just yeah, evaluating that and saying, right, what can I control here? And even if it's like personal things, like you know, if you know that exercise impacts your mental health and your mindset, then controlling that, even if business things feel quite out of control, then that gives you something that you can hold on to. For my husband, it's having a tidy house. Everything's better when the house is tidy, so you can control that, and then that impacts on everything else. But yeah, absolutely, what is under your control? Because there's always something. Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, is a great example for that. He was in a concentration camp and he survived, and he credits that to having a positive mindset throughout. So it's a short book. The first half particularly very interesting, and there's lots of his stuff on the internet, so I'm just going to write the name in there. You may well have heard of it, it's very well known. I think it's spelled like that, Eckhart Tolle. Oh, I need to send that to everyone, all panelists and attendees. There you go, that should have gone to everyone. So yeah, do look that up, that's good in terms of, you know, what we can control. Any other comments or questions? Anyone want to share how they're feeling? Thanks so much, Daniel. I appreciate your interaction. Okay, well, if everyone is happy, I hope that was useful to you, provided some value, and I'd love to hear your feedback or anything that you'd like to see in terms of critical thinking in the future. It'd be really interesting to hear from you. Agatha, if you're around, I'm gonna wrap things up there, I think. Yes. Thanks, Agatha. I feel like I'm talking to myself in these things. All right, thanks very much for your time, everyone, and I hope to see you at some point in the future. Cheers.